All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to this advisor training. My name is Robert Jones, where I'm the Assistant Director for Student Involvement and Leadership. I'm housed down in the Student Activities Office. Give you a little bit of idea of what we're going to talk about today. We're kind of in a weird time. You know, students have been gone or they've been here and they're coming back together. So we're trying to really get ahead of where we're at in how we can help our students, because you as advisors are that first line that students are going to come to. So we're going to talk about some of the resources that are available to the students that you work with. We're also going to take a look at some of the paperwork, some of the forms that they're going to come to you with, because if they're traveling or what they're doing, they're going to come and ask questions. So we'll see if we can eliminate some of those questions that you might have. And then finally, we're going to talk about a little bit about the struggles that some of the students might be dealing with this year as they begin to come together. So when we talk about resources, there are really three groups that I want to identify. First is what's called the commission. So the commission is our student government. There's a variety of different commissioners and commission groups that work, whether it's with diversity or technology, academic and student affairs, external. These are students who meet regularly to talk about issues that student groups may be facing in that time. So for example, I work with the Congress of Student Organizations. We are the group that will meet to recognize student organizations, help student organizations get started. So if we have students who are interested in some field that maybe we don't have a group in, then we can help them get started with that. These commission meetings are typically run by the students, and they're going to discuss various aspects of what they're hoping to accomplish. You know, maybe it's how do we advance our technology? How do we get students more involved? But there's three that I want to specifically outline for you all. The first is what's called the Congress of Student Organizations. As I said, this is the one that I work with closely. This is Mackenzie Weigel. She is the executive commissioner. So she's in essence the president of the commission. We are here to provide resources for your organization. So if your students have questions and maybe you're not quite sure what the answers are, you can contact Mackenzie, you can contact myself. We work with student senators and some at-large students to identify student organizations and help them to get started. Whether it's moving from the idea that some student has in their dorm room or residence hall room to temporary status, or temporary status into full-time status. Second one that I think your students will be interested in and need to know, and you as advisors, is our finance commission. This is the group of students who oversee the budget, the student activity fee budget. They are the ones who will award money to and help student organizations write their budgets. Two individuals to know: Matthew Friedman is the executive commissioner, and then Nicholas Sanger is the assistant executive commissioner. Now, I tell you this because of the way our structure is for budgeting. We have a three-tier system. Number one, the first tier, these are aspects of the campus that have been deemed important for the functioning and important for students, so they are getting their money, whether it's things like campus attractions, athletics, student publications. The second tier, which is probably organizations that most of you will work with, these are the ones that do budgetary requests. Nick is going to be the one that you're going to work closer with. He works with the tier 2 student organizations. Now, these tier 2 can be either what we call competitive or non-competitive. So if you advise a team sport, rugby or clay shooting, even some of our esports, they will be considered classified or competitive, and they might receive some different funding sources or different funding, as opposed to other organizations that still can reach out for conferences, philanthropies, fundraisers, that kind of thing. The last one that I want to highlight is the Public Relations Commission. This is headed by Ashlyn. Now, the Public Relations Commission is a great tool for your students when it comes to promoting events or activities that they may be doing for the campus as a whole. Ashton is in charge of social media pages. She can offer some great insight into how to get information out to students and some good ways to hopefully bring students into your organization. The second resource I want to address is the Student Activities Office, my office downstairs. Now, when we talk about the Student Activities Office, this is our mission. To further advance the mission of North Dakota State University by engaging and empowering students' potential so that they foster personal leadership development, diversity appreciation, positive social and personal growth. One of the things that I think is really important for us as advisors to remember is that when we're talking about the education of our students, there's a lot that happens in the classroom, but there's actually a lot that happens outside of the classroom, and that's where we come in. Just to give you, I love statistics, so I'm going to give you some. We talk about some of the things that students have looked for in the research: opportunities to develop teamwork, develop their communication, decision-making skills, problem solving. And in a recent project CEO, recent study by Project CEO, between 40 and 50% of respondents identified that these were the skills that they got through their co-curricular activities. So that's our role. That's what we're here to help with, and that's how we're here to help advance. We have what I like to call the small army of people who are ready to jump out and do this, starting with our director, Lisa Samuelson, myself, Jordan DePalma, who's the coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life, Nicole Askew, who's the coordinator for campus activities, and then the person who kind of keeps us going and keeps us all together, our administrative assistant, Tamara Gordon. Now, I want to tell you, just because your group may not be affiliated with Fraternity and Sorority Life or Campus Attractions doesn't mean that these folks can't help you. So if you come into our office or you have a question, any one of us are there to help, and we're happy to. I also want to highlight the grad assistants that we have in our office, whether we're talking about Dylan Goldstein, who works for me as in charge of leadership programs, Anna Hammerlich, who works with our campus attractions, Renee Fenstra, hopefully I get that right, who does club sports and student organizations. And we're going to talk about her and her role in just a moment. And then Irene Tamini, who does civic engagement and then also works with our fraternity and sorority life. They're just as knowledgeable. In fact, in our office, we consider them professionals in training. So if we're not there and they're there, ask for their questions. Some of the things that we do in our office that I think will be beneficial to you, we are resources. I was just mentioning how I had a student in my office last week who had wanted to do a fundraiser and she wanted to kind of work through some of the stuff. That's some of the resources that we can bring. We are there to develop the leadership and leadership skills of your students. My role is going to be to, as I get more involved in figuring out how to enhance the leadership opportunities that students have here on campus. We're there to help with any MyNDSU questions, any of the forms, and we'll walk through some of those here in just a moment. And then I feel like I have to tell this. I hate talking about this. It is not the part of my job that I enjoy, but we are also the people who will look at the code of conduct violations. Some other resources that are available to your students that you might want to make them aware, and I've shared this with them in their leadership meetings, but students are busy. We have that professional knowledgeable staff that I mentioned. We do have some storage space available. So if you have, they're basically cabinets that can be locked. So there's some of that. There's art supplies. So if you're looking to make banners or posters or anything like that. And then we do have our campus mailboxes downstairs. One of the things I also want to address, because as I look at working with Generation Z, which is a generation that's currently here in college, this is a generation that's looking for volunteer opportunities. It's a driving force for their generation based on research. So in recent years, there's been the volunteer network here on campus, but recently they've merged with the campus attractions. There's still those opportunities out there for student and groups to get involved and volunteer and track their hours. And by tracking their hours, there's opportunities for awards. We do have some opportunities coming up that In fact, this morning you should have gotten, or it's in your email, notification of the Boo at NDSU with with NDSU soccer. Great opportunity. And one of the things that I really want to encourage with student organizations is that volunteering, not only do you get your name out there, but it's a great way to attract students, particularly if there's those certain things that your students are looking to do, whether it's volunteering with veterans groups or volunteering to do, I was mentioning a student group that was looking to host a prom for developmentally disabled people, and they might need people to do adjustments and for dresses, things like that. There's those opportunities out there for your students. What do we got? Yes, I will share the PowerPoint. I'll post it to the student activity MyNDSU page later today. So you can notice there's a couple up here. Obviously, we've missed the Serve with the Herd for homecoming. That was last week, but it'll come around again next year. So food drives, Giving Tree, MLK Service Day. So some great opportunities. This is the slide that I'm most proud of when we talk about volunteering. So we have the Bison Service Challenge. So depending on what category you fit in, you can win awards, which once again elevates. If we're thinking about a generation that loves to serve or is looking for service opportunities, the more service you do, the more recognition. So if you're an academic-based organization, how can you log your hours and get this? So we can do Philanthropy of the Year, service-based organizations. What's the largest representation for the volunteer network? This is my favorite part of this. Last year, NDSU students recorded 9,418 hours of service in the Fargo-Moorhead community, which when you start to factor in the cost that it would take to employ people to do that, saved nonprofits over almost $240,000, which I think is really kind of impressive and cool, and would love to see that number get higher next year. Oops. So if you're going to have your students log their service hours, it's important that they go to MyNDSU, open up their account, find the service hours. It's typically on the left-hand side. You might have to click on the little, I don't know, a hamburger looking 3 lines. Choose what you want, fill out the form. Please encourage your student leaders to go into this every once in a while and approve that these hours were done. This is the way these hours get tracked. So we've talked about the commission, we've talked about the student activities office. The last resource is obviously for you. You're a resource for the students. And in all respects, you're probably that first resource that they're going to go to. Now, I want to address this because sometimes when we talk about advising student organizations, people are like, how much time is this going to take? Or they jump right in and they want to help. Our role is to be a resource. That's our biggest role when we're working with these students. Making sure that we can oversee their events and their activities, be a part of them, be supportive of them. Offer that mentoring and directions. Number one, so we can avoid the code of conduct, make sure that they're following policies and procedures. If you have questions about those, give us a call in our office. Be that sounding board for them to aid them in the planning process. You know, if a student comes and it's like, hey, we have $1,000 and we want to bring some big musical artist. Think we can do that? Probably not going to work. But how can we do it? How can we meet those students' needs? And then just help them to achieve their goals as students. So I want to open up, see if there are any questions. So now we get to the housekeeping part. And this is what I found students right now are kind of struggling with. And one of the reasons I'm putting this in there is because they might be coming to you. So when we talk about student organizations, to be an officer in a student organization, you have to have a 2.0 cumulative GPA. You have to be enrolled at NDSU, even if it's in just one class. And then you have to be good standing with the university. We'll go through at the beginning of each year and we'll check these off and make sure they are, and a large majority of our students are, so that's awesome. To be good standing as an organization, you need to make sure that they have a My NDSU page, make sure that My NDSU page is up to date. So, are the current leadership on there, who's in charge? One of the questions that I've been getting lately, and I'll just put to you all right now, is there a point where we will kind of purge those people who have graduated? Because it's been kind of hard for students now in leadership to figure out who's here and who's not. It'll probably be in December. So there may be just a massive cut. I don't think they've done it in a while because of COVID and trying to figure that stuff out. So just know that it's coming. If they know who's left, your students can actually remove some of those folks too. You have to make sure you have a president, vice president, treasurer, and an advisor. So you have all of that. If your student organization is in temporary status or looking for a temporary status, they have to have a minimum 9, but to get a fully recognized, they have to have 15 members. We do look on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the organization is, and if you can even have 15 members. Constitution needs to be updated every 3 years. They are required to attend a large group meeting, which most of the groups have. So we did that in the last couple of weeks. They've attended it. That's all taken care of. Please encourage them to check their mailboxes down in the student activity office once a week. There's some really good information in there. With homecoming last week, we were putting lots of stuff in there, but anything coming out. And then making sure that the forms that need to be filled out are being filled out, and they're being filled out in a timely manner. And we'll talk about those in just a moment. So if you're not aware, we have what we call standings, and it's a 0 to 5. 3, 4, and 5, you're in good standing. And if you're a fully recognized organization, you have all the benefits awarded to you. Room reservations, hanging posters, things like that, requesting a budget. If your organization is a 1 or a 2, then those are restricted. You don't get to reserve space, you don't get to hang posters until you get it up. Now, we do offer, and I'll outline a couple of them here towards the end, we offer opportunities for what we call status boost events. These can be a 1-hour training that your students can attend, and it will boost them up 1 point. So just to put it out there, for Mackenzie and myself, we're going with the idea that every student organization will be at a 4 and a 5 by the end of the year. That's our goal. Make sure to complete required trainings. The MLRT that we talked about just a moment ago was one. Make sure your bills are being paid on time. And then turn in any information to the CSO as required. So we talk about paperwork. There's a few things we need to be aware of. First, name, logo, all of that stuff. NDSU has certain expectations for image and logos. We can't adjust the color, we can't adjust the size or the font, logo stuff. So need to be very aware of that. We also need to recognize that the logo for the mascot is owned by athletics. So sometimes that they may not have access to that. Like I said before, I'm going to post this on our website or on our My NDSU page, so you can get to the link there, and it outlines specifically what you can. You can download certain things. So next, I want to talk about travel forms. There's 2 travel forms specifically to make you aware of. The number 1 travel form is the student organization travel notification. This is if any student organization is planning to take a trip anywhere outside of the Fargo-Moorhead area, they need to complete this form. Liability for students is linked to the My NDSU page. So that's one of the things that your students will have to make sure they do, is log into their My NDSU page at least once a semester. There's a privacy clause in there. There's also a liability clause. They just need to identify that. We look at that to make sure that, are they still a student? Are they covered? Another aspect of this is that your students will have to send an accurate list of who is attending the conference or the competition or whatever event they're leaving town to do. That can be attached in an Excel sheet. The purpose for the Excel is because we will take a look at membership and compare it to that, and it just makes it a lot easier. The second form is the student travel waiver. Now, the reason I'm illustrating this is because we're getting a lot of confusion with this. So if you, as a faculty member, are sending students for a department event or work, this is the form that they would have to fill out. And each student would have to fill this out. This is specifically if it's not listed as part of the syllabus. Does that make sense? So from a student org standpoint, the only thing you should worry about is a student organizational travel notification. This is found on the CSO page. Go to forms, and it's one of the starred ones we have. It needs to be submitted 2 weeks prior, just to make sure that everything is kind of documented. Once it's submitted, someone from our office will contact you. And then again, each student must log into their MyNDSU account. You're going to receive an email from Rachel, my grad assistant, who does the club sports. In fact, it's going to come up, this NDSU SAO club sports. That's her work email. So I think some people may be like, well, I'm getting this, why? She's going to email you just to say, ask the question, do you know about this trip and do you approve of this trip? We can't approve it until we hear back from you saying, yep, we know about it. It's all good. So please, when you see that, make sure that you just let them know. Part of this is because you don't have to, as advisors, sign off on travel authorizations anymore. Yes. No, it's typically going to be the student. So, because with the travel notification, we look for a trip lead. So whoever's going to be kind of that in charge, that may be you if you are going with them. It may be the president of your student organization, but we want the trip lead. We want their contact information. This is also, if something should happen, we know how to get a hold of you. And the Excel spreadsheet allows us to say, if you're in an accident, we can then contact family members to say, hey, this is what happened. They're okay, or so on and so forth. The other thing to consider specifically with travel right now is COVID. We encourage you to, because of the fluidity of the situation with COVID, be checking Center for Disease Control, North Dakota Public Health, particularly before making any travel requirements. And then you can always check our student activities page for any COVID related information. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So Laura sent out an email a month and a half ago regarding COVID and some of those things that were set up. Like what we could do as advisors when we are traveling with them. One of the guidelines in there was to have a rigorous test 1 to 3 days prior to travel. Do we need to contact student health ahead of time to let them know that students may be coming to test 1 to 3 days prior based on travel, or?
I would say based on courtesy, yes, just so that they're prepared, but I don't think there's any requirements. But you do bring up a good point. We've actually had other institutions, this has particularly been with some of our club sports, but I feel like it's going to come more and more with conferences, that we'll get a document that they want the institution to sign, saying these people have all been tested and so on and so forth. We are not signing those. We cannot guarantee whether students have been tested, whether they've been vaccinated. So it's just become that we are not going to sign any of those documents. So this is something that apparently students didn't know they had, but it's an option for you or for them. We have a rental car program with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. You can talk to the Finance Commission, get a code, and this will allow students to rent the car at a government rate. The code works because typically, as you all know, rental car companies, you have to be at least 25. But with this code, it actually allows anybody under 25 to rent the car. Now, when it comes to paying for the car, if you are a student organization that has a budget, that has travel incorporated with your budget, you can use this as a way to basically reimburse your organization for paying for the rental car. What student government has identified is if you have 4 people going to a conference, you can rent a sedan and they will cover up to that. Now, say your students are like, hey, we're going to go to this conference, but we want to go in style and we're going to rent a Cadillac or something, then they would have to pay the difference. And I looked at this morning and the rental rate is about, for a mid-size sedan, is about $40 a day. And there's a 2,500 free miles with that. So you can get pretty much anywhere around here that you'd want to drive to. So the alcohol risk management assessment. This is also found on the CSO page. This is basically if you're going to have alcohol at any event, you have to complete this form. It needs to be filled out and submitted to our office 2 weeks prior to the event. Here's kind of a screenshot of the form. You're in a description of the event, what's going on, estimated number of attendance, who's your target audience, things to be aware of with this. You have to have a third-party vendor for distributing. So if you were to host it at a Ramada or the Delta, that would be your third-party vendor. You also have to pay for security. So I don't know the name of security companies in town, but that would be another third party. You have to provide sober monitors. And the sober monitors, the ratio that we use is 1 sober monitor for every 10 people who potentially could drink. So if you have 200 people at your event, you need 20 sober monitors. You also need to be able to provide some sort of sober transportation. The sober drivers and the sober monitors cannot be the same people because the sober drivers may be leaving periodically. You also need to be able to provide that there's going to be non-alcoholic alternatives, as well as some kind of food that people can eat, non-salty food. As somebody who worked in hotels and restaurants for years, we loved our pretzels and our peanuts because people drank more. We're not looking for that. So and again, this needs all of this information. You also need to submit an accurate list of the people who are attending and any guests that they might be bringing. And again, this all has to be submitted 2 weeks prior to. Facilities use agreement. This is another form that students are filling out. If you're reserving a space anywhere on campus, with exception of the Memorial Union, you need to complete a facilities use agreement. Now, if there is no room set up, no catering, you need to do it a minimum of 5 days. If you have a room set up or catering, you're going to need 10 days so that we can prepare. If your students are meeting on the same day, at the same time, in the same place, you only need 1 form. So you're just going to have to fill in all of, make sure all those dates are documented. Again, this is another one where you don't need the signature. If your students do not receive a confirmation email for this form, the form has not been accepted. So they should get a confirmation email once it has been received. And then failure to fill out the FUA could result in a cancellation of your event or being docked, those statuses that we talked about earlier. Fundraising forms. We've been seeing a lot of these come in, and I'm excited for that because some of them are really great looking fundraisers. Then these are found under the CSO page on MyNDSU. Again, it needs to be filled out at least 2 weeks prior to the fundraiser event actually happening. This needs to be filled out anytime an organization is accepting funds other than collecting membership dues or receiving donations. So if you're selling something, you are providing some sort of service, car wash or whatever, this needs to be filled out. It also needs to be filled out. One of the big Fundraisers we're seeing now is when you can go to a restaurant like Chipotle or Applebee's or Pizza Ranch. Just need to fill that out, mostly because we want to make sure we're not bombarding people with the same thing. We also need to recognize that when it comes to doing a bake sale, you cannot do home baked food items. So, grandma's cookies, we can't sell them on campus anymore. That is a health and safety issue. Um, This is what the form looks like. And I show this to you because there are a couple things to be aware of. Right here in the center, and it's kind of hard to read here, um, identifies kind of what you're doing. Are you selling admissions? Are you selling merchandise? Depending on what you're doing, you may have to get additional approval. So for example, if you're selling merchandise, because it would be in competition, it could potentially be in competition with a bookstore, we get approval from the bookstore. If you're selling food, maybe you're doing like grilling hot dogs or something, or you're buying prepackaged stuff, getting that approval from the dining services downstairs. This is just to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page and in agreement so that they can't come back and be like, we didn't know. Once those are filled out, you can bring it to our office, sign it. We'll sign it, and then we'll copy it and then give a copy to you for your records. Now, in our leadership training, students were really excited about this. Our dining services is offering catering grants for student organizations, up to $150. You go to my NDSU page, the CSO page. You need to allow about 10 days to fill this out. So if you want to have for, I don't know, Thanksgiving, you want to have a fake Thanksgiving celebration for your student org and you're going to order a bunch of pizzas, this might be a great opportunity for that. $150. Grants only available for events between on Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. One of the questions that's come up lately, we've had tri-college, which is actually 5 college now. Student organizations can allow individuals from other institutions to be a part of their organization, with a few exceptions. They cannot participate in fraternity and sorority life. They cannot participate in intramurals or NCAA athletics. It is to the discretion of each institution as to whether they can participate, but generally speaking, if FABO, am I right? FABO, there's a student over at MSUM or M State that is interested in that, they can come and become involved in that organization. Any questions on the housekeeping? That is the dry part of this. Yes.
Are students from other schools then able to sign into my NDSU? Sign up the organization, or how does that work?
No, they wouldn't have access to that. But if they see the poster or they want to come for an event that maybe your organization's hosting a philanthropy and they want to come, then that could be an option. So.
I have a question with regarding to the catering part. I'm representing ASI.
Mhm.
So we used to generally get cooked once a year for Diwali function. So is it only a certain number of people are now inside for kitchen area?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
For kitchen area, we bring our own recipes and have the catering area to cook for the.
I would, so the question is helping catering cook for an event, that would be up to them.
We need to connect with.
Yeah, to see about limited people or how many people they'll allow in the space. Yes. Mhm. As long as they're competing under their school's name and the school is, yeah, yeah, I don't. I view that as a cost saving for not only that, them and their institution, but for us. Okay, okay, okay. I think as long as they're not competing under NDSU and NDSU is not paying for it, then. Okay. If you do get any of those students and there isn't anything, you can send them our way and we can try to figure out how they can maybe start a club at their institution. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. No, that I understand. All right. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. So let's look at it. Oops. I believe it's for the full year is $150 because it's a limited amount of money that dining services set aside. So I believe it's fully for the full year. However, if you get to March of next year, you can always put in for another grant. The worst thing they can do is say no. And I would, if I'm understanding your question about room reservations, if it is not a university space, then, or it's, if it's a university space, then you would need a facilities use agreement, whether it's a classroom or a meeting space, or if it is not. Okay. Um, Let me back up for just a second. So a room reservation isn't necessarily, or is not the same as a facilities use agreement. So the room reservations, you can make those room reservations and, through the dean's office or through the reservation platform online. The facilities use agreement is a separate from that. So you actually will fill out and make the room reservation first and then fill out the facilities use agreement. It's just basically an agreement that we're going to abide by policies and we're going to abide by expectations of the institution and that. So those are two separate things. Now, with that being said, if your dean was to reserve the space and then do a facilities use agreement, you would only have to do one facilities use agreement per student organization. So I would recommend doing it just to dot the T's and, or cross the T's and dot the I's. And excuse me. And if you know that it's, the first Monday of every month is this club, when you fill out the form, You just specify that. So it's one facilities use for each organization meet, each organization. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. So
Okay.
so basically the student organization that I advise would just fill out one facilities use agreement and just list the dates and times that they're having their regular meetings throughout the year, semester, and it just be a one-time thing, correct? Unless they're having a separate event aside from those meetings.
Yes. So the question, where can I find out the current status level is? That is on your My NDSU page. As an advisor, you do have, or you should have some limited administrative status. So you can check there. If not, give me a call or shoot me an email and I can look it up for you too, if you want to save time.
I have a question.
Yes.
So my department offered made available room for the student organization. So can I, and the students can use it anytime. So should the organization then file an application for 24/7 usage of that room throughout the year so that they don't have to apply every time they walk into that room? Would that be acceptable?
That's a really good question.
For example, I also host the meetings sometimes we have a conference room, and I am as a faculty in the department. I can use the conference room at any time. So if I decide to invite the students for the organization to have the meeting, so I could not do that until at least the authorization is filed 5 days before. Is that?
That's technically what it should be, but I think if it's a room that's been solely designated for student organizations within the department.
Yeah, there's an office. Yeah, there's a room that are assigned to it, and there's a conference room, a department conference room that the faculty used to meet. And we had a couple meetings where I invited them to host the meeting there. And since I have in other words, I have the ability to use the room, so I was the host. So even if I'm the host, I cannot do that then unless they.
I'll tell you what, why don't you, if you could shoot me an email with like your department and student org, I will look into that and see what I can find out for you.
Okay.
Just more specifics.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions? So the last part of this presentation is I want to talk a little bit just briefly about what to expect with our student orgs as they're coming back. So when we talk about this year, we're talking about some bumpy roads. Students maybe have been gone for a year. What a lot of research is showing us is that people in general have kind of forgotten how to interact with people. And this is going to elevate conflict within our organization. It's going to probably cause some animosity. Couple that with the fact that a lot of student organization leaders did not get much transition into their position. Students graduated, they moved on, and then they were like, here, you're now the president or the vice president. And these students are like, I don't know what's going on. I've been seeing more of that, and this is one of the reasons for doing this. I want people to know that this is perfectly normal, first of all. It's a little elevated given the COVID situation, but every year our students are coming in and they're following this progression. And maybe you've heard of this forming, norming, storming. They're coming in, they're bringing new members in, new personalities, new traits, and we're trying to figure out how to work with each other. And these new people and old people have left. And this creates that storming process, this conflict that arises. We're seeing this happening. Our job as advisors is to help people work through some of this, navigate some of this, whether it's coming to our office to figure out, hey, how can we help with conflict resolution or work through some of these struggles, or coming to you as advisors. But if we can push through the storm and we can navigate this conflict, then we begin to norm. And what we find when we start to norm is organizations figure out who's doing what, how things are working together. And that's where they start to perform. That's where they start to elevate and begin to grow. And eventually we get to the end of the year and they adjourn. They go their separate ways with the goal of coming back again. So I know I've talked to students and I've talked to some other people who are just stressing because students there's conflict, they're struggling, they don't know what's happening. It's really wearing on them with everything else. As advisors, please know that this is normal. Our job is to help them navigate that. How are we doing this? What can we do to help them? Now, the other tied in with that, I want to look forward to what's coming up. So we talked about status change events on October 13th. So tomorrow at 6 o'clock, there's a finance training for student organization presidents, vice presidents, and treasurers, and/or this is an opportunity to sit down with Nick and Dylan. They're going to walk through the finance process, help you get a better understanding. This is a status boost event. So if you are, a 1 through 4 and you want to go up one more, this is an event that your students can attend. Another one is Budget 101, December 2nd. That is also a budget or a status change event. We're doing this because your organizational budget. So if you are a tier 2 organization and you're going to submit a budget and you want to get some of that money, those budgets are going to be due for 2022-23 school year, probably mid-January, sometime around January 15th. So to be aware for that. The last thing is, and I've told this to organization presidents, I'm going to tell it to you all too, start looking for replacements. I know that sounds really weird to say because we're only halfway through the first semester, but if we can start identifying who's going to take over, it eases the transition process because your presidents can start working with them next year or next semester. So identify who's going to replace people. Just want to give you some last minute resources, contact information. If you want to reach out to Mackenzie, she holds office hours in the Congress of Student Organizations, Memorial Union 128. You can email her at ndsu.sg.sco or CSO, or give her a call. That is the office number for student government. Somebody will answer. It may not be Mackenzie, but she will get the message if she's not in there. If you need to contact Finance Commission, you can contact them at ndsu.sg.finance or public relations, Ashlyn Shower at ndsu.edu. If you're looking for a student activities office, we're downstairs, Memorial Union 120. You can give us a call at 7787. That is our front desk number. Or you can find us on My NDSU. If your students are looking to volunteer, I encourage you to reach out to the Volunteer Student Network. I know they're looking for the boo at NDSU. Did I say that right? Which I think would be a great opportunity for students to get out, especially if the weather keeps holding up the way it has been, which it will be. But if there are other opportunities that you're looking for, there's some civic engagement stuff. They do have a clearinghouse that you can look into. So, any last minute questions?
Is there a set number of hours that every organization has to fulfill for a volunteer?
No, they're not required to do it, but if you want to kind of get in there for those Buys It Service Challenge, as many as you can.
I think in the past they've had to.
Not that I'm aware of, no. Well, if there's no other questions, I want to thank you all for your time. I know you're all busy and an hour at lunch is a lot. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I will be up here. If not, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.